You ever watch something on a security camera and your brain just locks on like, wait, nah, something's off here. That's exactly what happened. In a quiet neighborhood out in Lancaster, California, around 4 a.m., a Ring doorbell camera picks up motion. Nothing unusual at first, right? But it's not a dog, not a neighbor, not somebody coming home late. The footage shows a man, and he's dragging something heavy, something long, wrapped tight in fabric, scraping across the concrete. And the dude is struggling. You can see it in his shoulders. The way he's leaning his entire weight, just to haul it toward the trunk of a car. At that moment, anyone watching would just feel that cold little drop in their stomach. Because whatever's inside that fabric, it isn't small. And later, according to investigators, that object is believed to be the body of his wife, 33-year-old Shyella Cabrera. Shyella was a mother of 3 boys, 9, 6, and 4, originally from Peru. Came to the U.S. chasing the same dream so many do. Work hard, build something better, give your kids a future bigger than your past. Ask anyone who knew her and they'll say the same things. She was warm. She cared. She showed up. But behind that light, there was hurt. Because the man in that Ring footage, police say, was her husband, Josemar Cabrera. And on the outside, they looked like a regular family. But relatives say behind closed doors, things were different. Shyella's mother, Helga, still back in Peru, told reporters the relationship had been troubled long before they moved to the U.S. She says Shyella told her about abuse, about control, about him telling her where she could go, who she could speak to, what she was allowed to do. Her family even claims Shyella said he once slapped one of the kids. Those are serious allegations, straight from the family. Shyella wanted out. She talked about divorce, about starting over. But every time she mentioned leaving, according to relatives, he allegedly threatened to take the children. Try anything, and I'll disappear with them. For a mother, that's not a relationship. That's a cage. You don't stay because you want to. You stay because leaving means losing the people you're staying for. Months before the incident, family says Shyella had reached her breaking point. She was preparing to walk away. But what she didn't know was that one late-night moment, caught on a Ring camera, would soon become the center of an investigation that changed everything. So the real question is, how did things escalate to that moment? What happened in the hours before that footage was recorded? 'Cause that is where the story really begins. If you only saw the Ring footage, you'd probably think the story starts right there. But nah. The real story, the part that explains how everything went so wrong, actually began the day before. According to friends and family, Shyella had been slowly preparing to leave the relationship. Not loud, not messy, not some dramatic movie scene. Just quietly, little steps, one piece at a time. Family members told reporters Shyella had been reaching out more, talking about wanting safety, reset, a space where her boys could grow up without looking over their shoulders. See, leaving an abusive relationship isn't just, okay, I'm done by strategy. It's patience. It's waiting for that one moment where you feel like maybe, just maybe, you can get out alive. And the day before that footage was captured, Shyella allegedly told a close friend, "I'm ready." She had finally made the call. It's time to go. That same night, neighbors say they heard raised voices inside the house. Not loud enough to call the cops. Just loud enough to make you stop mid-step and go, something's off. One neighbor said it was the kind of argument where you can't hear the words, but you feel the tension in your chest. And according to court documents and later statements, that tension had been building for months. Friends say Shyella had been quietly stacking money, hiding it, planning to get her own place, planning to escape. She didn't tell many people because she was scared. She allegedly believed that if her husband found out, he would actually follow through on his threat to take the kids. So when she decided to leave, She didn't announce anything. She planned. She waited for morning. For light. For the world to be awake. But investigators say the argument might have happened first. Authorities believe the confrontation went down late that night, or real early in the morning, before neighbors were up, before anyone could hear, before help was even possible. What was said in that moment? No one alive except the suspect knows. But here's what police and prosecutors claim. Some point that night, something went very, very wrong. And by the time the sun came up, Shyella was no longer alive. Hours later, that Ring camera wakes up. Motion detected. Figure. Dragging. Lifting. Struggling. The weight of something that should have been walking on its own. Investigators say that footage became one of the key pieces of evidence. But what happened after is what stunned the whole community. 'Cause police say he didn't just dispose of the body. He allegedly took the kids with him. 3 little boys. Still asleep. Still innocent. In the back of that same car. So now the question is, where did he go? And how long did he think he could keep running? With 3 children in the car. When the car pulled away from that quiet street in Lancaster, California, nobody had any idea what just happened. No sirens. No neighbors stepping outside. No panic. Just a father driving into the darkness. 3 little kids sleeping in the back seat. And, according to investigators, their mother in the trunk. Authorities later pieced the timeline together using traffic cams, cell tower hits, and statements from family. Here's what they say happened next. The car headed toward Nevada. Not speeding. Not swerving. Just cruising. Like it was just another late-night road trip. And this part right here. It hits heavy. At some point during that drive, the kids woke up. They reportedly asked where their mom was. They allegedly asked why their dad looked upset. Think about that for a second. 3 little boys. Strapped into booster seats. Holding snacks. Staring out the window. With no idea of what was behind them. Investigators say the suspect stopped for gas somewhere along the highway. Security footage, according to police, shows him walking around the car like everything was normal. Steady. Focused. Not frantic. Not broken. And that's what shook everyone. Because when someone has just done something horrible, they usually show it. But in that footage, he looked collected. Like someone who'd already made up his mind. Like someone who'd rehearsed this moment way too many times in his head. Meanwhile, back in California, people were starting to notice something was wrong. Shyella didn't show up for work. She didn't reply to messages. She didn't call her mom, and she called her mom every single day. Family tried calling. Friends texted. Hours passed. That quiet worry started turning into fear. Someone finally went to the house. The door was unlocked. Lights off. No Shyella. But the kids' clothes. Their shoes, their toys. That's when reality hit. The family called 911. A missing persons report was filed. And once detectives started putting the pieces together, the Ring camera footage came into play. Motion detected. 4 a.m. A man dragging something. Police froze the frame. Zoomed in. Matched the build. Matched the clothing. Matched the car. And that's when the manhunt started. Statewide alert issued. Patrol units notified. Helicopters. Highway patrol. Border checkpoints. Because now, this wasn't just someone missing. This was a suspect traveling across state lines. With 3 children. And possibly, a body. And if someone is willing to go that far, how far are they willing to go next? Did the kids realize the truth during that trip? And how did police finally track him down? That's what comes next. Fire. Once the Ring footage was reviewed, and Shyella was officially reported missing, things started moving fast. Lancaster deputies got state authorities involved. State authorities hit up Nevada Highway Patrol. And suddenly, the alert wasn't just local anymore. It was broadcast across multiple states. The car description. The suspect's name. and 3 minor children potentially in danger. This wasn't small town anymore. This was interstate law enforcement. And when something hits that level, everybody starts watching. But here's the thing most people don't realize. Fugitives don't always run. Sometimes they blend. They just melt into the highway. One more car in an endless line of headlights. Investigators say the vehicle was traced using license plate readers on the major interstates. Not instantly but slowly, like digital breadcrumbs lighting up a map. Highway camera in Barstow. Another near Prim. Gas receipts later matched. A phone allegedly pinging a cell tower just outside Las Vegas. Piece by piece, the trail started taking shape. Meanwhile, in the car, according to family and prosecutorial statements, the mood changed. The kids started to notice. They weren't going where they usually go. Their mom wasn't calling. Their dad wasn't saying much of anything. Family later said the boys kept asking, "Where's Mom? When are we going home?" And investigators believe the suspect just kept driving. Then east, then north, switching direction, avoiding exits, avoiding familiar ground, like someone who knows they're being hunted. Back in California, Shyella's mother, still in Peru, is on the phone with detectives, crying, begging, praying for some kind of mistake. Her voice would later play in interviews, and it wrecked people online. Because she didn't ask, "What happened?" She asked, "Where are my grandchildren? Are they safe?" Her heartbreak wasn't just losing a daughter. It was not knowing if her grandchildren were alive. By now, FBI field offices are assisting. But the break didn't come from surveillance tech, or drones, or intelligence task forces. Came from something simple. Something every fugitive eventually has to face. You can drive, you can hide, you can run across state lines. But unless your tank runs on denial, you're stopping somewhere. Investigators say the suspect pulled into a service station near the California-Nevada border. And this time someone noticed. Not because they knew the news. Not because they recognized him. But because the car looked weighted down in the back. And the kids looked drained, confused. Quiet in a way kids aren't supposed to be quiet. The witness didn't know the story. They just felt something was wrong. They called 911. And that one call changed everything. Within minutes, highway patrol was moving. Then aerial units. Then tactical response. Because nobody knew how this was about to end. Was he gonna surrender? Run? Make a desperate move? Or worst case, would he try to take the kids with him? In a way no one could undo. When officers finally reached that vehicle, what they found inside would shock everyone. The call from that gas station didn't sound dramatic. Nobody said, "There's a fugitive here." Nobody said, "There's a body in the trunk." All the witness said was something like, "There's a man here with 3 little kids. And something just doesn't feel right." And sometimes, that's all it takes. Within minutes, Nevada Highway Patrol units were moving. Dashcams rolling. Lights off. Approach slow. When they finally spotted the vehicle on the highway, they didn't rush it. This wasn't a scene to slam in with sirens and adrenaline. 3 kids were inside. One wrong move, one panicked reaction, could turn everything into a tragedy. So they followed, quiet, patient, waiting for the perfect moment. Finally, an exit appeared. Wide shoulder, open space, low traffic, lights flicked on. Pull over. No chase, no speeding. Car just slowed, rolled to a stop. Officers stepped out carefully, guns down but ready. One officer approached the driver's window. The man inside looked calm. Who come? According to police reports, he didn't argue. He didn't demand answers. He didn't even ask what was happening. He just complied. The kids in the back seat, confused, tired, clutching blankets and backpacks. One officer spoke softly. "You're okay. You're safe." At this point, no one knew if Shyella was alive. No body had been found yet. The officers asked the man where his wife was. He didn't answer. They asked again. Silence. Then one officer moved to the rear of the car. Trunk. And here's where it gets almost cinematic. No struggle. No yelling. No hesitation. The trunk opened. Inside, wrapped in fabric, a human body. Later confirmed as Shyella. The scene froze. Not with screaming. Not with panic. Just heavy silence. The kind of silence where everyone gets it at once. Something irreversible has happened. The man was handcuffed. The kids were carefully removed. One reportedly asked, "Is mommy okay?" The officers didn't answer. Not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't. There was no truth a child should have to hear. The children were taken into protective care. The father was transported into custody. And the investigation shifted from, "Where is Shyella?" "Why did this happen?" But as details came out, people learned something that made this even harder to process. According to prosecutors, this wasn't sudden. This wasn't impulsive. This may have been planned. So, what triggered the final breaking point? What went down in that house that night? Before that camera caught the dragging scene. To understand what went down inside that house, before the Ring camera even caught the dragging, you gotta rewind. Not hours. Not days. Months. 'Cause according to family and prosecutors, the relationship had been falling apart for a long time. Not one massive blow-up, but a slow, steady collapse. And on that final night, it all came to a head. Now, nobody alive except the suspect knows the exact words exchanged. But investigators pieced together a general timeline using phone records, messages from that day, statements from family, evidence inside the home. Here's what police say likely happened. Earlier that evening, Shyella reportedly talked about leaving. Not loud, not dramatic, just a calm, determined decision she had finally accepted. Family members later said she'd been saving money, reaching out for support. It wasn't just a thought anymore. It was a plan. And according to prosecutors, that plan may have triggered the confrontation. See, when someone who thrives on control senses they're losing it, things can turn dangerous. Yes. Investigators believe a verbal argument broke out first. Shouting, accusations, fear crawling along the walls of the house. And here's the part that hits hard. The kids were likely home. Whether they heard everything, or just fragments, no one knows for sure. But investigators say the situation escalated. Something was said. Something was done. Something crossed the line. And in that moment, prosecutors say, the argument turned violent. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment thing. Not a snap decision. Evidence points to intent. Signs of struggle. Items out of place. Damage in the rooms. Investigators believe Shyella tried to defend herself. Tried to fight. Tried to save her life. But ultimately, she never got the chance to walk out of that house. Once it ended, the suspect was left with a choice. Call 911. Ask for help. Tell someone. According to prosecution, he didn't. Instead, he moved to cover it up. And that's where the Ring footage comes in. Bragging. Lifting. Draining. Not panic. Not frantic. Just determined. Like someone who had already decided their next moves. And this is the moment the tragedy hits a different level. Shyella was trying to leave. To save her children's future. And instead, her children's future was forever changed. Her family says all she ever wanted was peace. Safety. Chance to breathe. But that chance was taken from her. But when the case finally went to court, something unexpected happened. Twist. No one saw coming. When the case finally hit the courtroom, most people thought this would be simple. There was Ring footage. Cross-state chase. 3 kids involved. From the outside, it looked pretty clear-cut. But once the defense stepped in, the story shifted. This wasn't going to be a quick conviction. The defense didn't just plead guilty. They challenged how the events were interpreted. The prosecution's angle. Prosecutors laid it out straight. According to Shyella's family, the relationship had a history of alleged abuse. They argued Syella had been planning to leave, and that might have triggered the confrontation. They pointed to family statements, alleged threats about custody, actions taken after Shyella's death. Prosecutors argued this wasn't impulse. It was control. They saw the movement of the body and the interstate travel as a way to avoid consequences. But, and this is key, all of this was presented as allegations, not proven facts. The defendant still had the right to be presumed innocent. The defense strategy. The defense pushed back hard. They argued, no police reports documented abuse. The couple had been under emotional and financial stress. The situation may have escalated unexpectedly. A heated argument. The death wasn't pre-planned, but an emotional tragedy. They also emphasized, the children were not harmed during the events. They used this to suggest the dad's actions were chaotic, not calculated. The goal, not to say nothing happened, but to reframe what the court thought happened. The twist. Digital evidence. Then, the courtroom shifted. Prosecutors introduced Google search records. Queries about custody disputes, international travel with children, how to disappear with minors. The defense disputed it, saying search history alone doesn't prove intent. Context matters. But digital records don't argue. They don't panic. They don't lie. They just exist. And sometimes, that's enough to make a jury see things differently. Legal safety notice on screen. All individuals are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Information in this video is based on public records, court filings, and allegations reported by authorities and family members. One line. Total protection white heavy check mark. But the most emotional moment wasn't the prosecution, wasn't the defense. It came from the only ones who actually lived inside that home. The children. The courtroom was quiet. Not tense. Not dramatic. It was still. Like everyone was holding their breath without even realizing it. The prosecution stood up and hit play on the surveillance footage. But this time not just to show it. To walk the jury through it. Frame by frame. Second by second. The screen showed the same driveway. The same long, heavy bundle. The same slow, dragging motion across the ground. Only this time, in slow motion. Prosecutors said, this is where the timeline begins to matter. No yelling. No theatrics. Just connecting timestamps. When the phone calls stopped. When the car left the driveway. When ring notifications triggered. When location pings shifted. It was like watching a puzzle assemble itself. Minute by minute. The defense jumped in immediately. This is interpretation, not fact. The judge didn't flinch. The jury will determine what interpretation is reasonable. And just like that, the energy in the room shifted. Then came what prosecutors called the emotional center of the case. The children. No details. No testimony. No personal exposure. Just one simple statement from public filings. Custody and control were ongoing points of tension. The prosecution argued it showed power and control. The defense said it was just marital stress. Suddenly, the whole trial could be summed up in one table. Prosecution says, defense says. This was about control. This was a misunderstanding. Actions were intentional. Actions were misread or accidental. Behavior fit a repeating pattern. Behavior is exaggerated under stress. The jury didn't react outwardly, but they were watching. Pauses. Tone. The words each side chose carefully. Sometimes in a courtroom, silence says more than any testimony ever could. But then, something happened nobody expected. Not the prosecution. Not the defense. From someone who had been silent the entire trial. A voice the courtroom did not see coming. The one person no one expected to speak. There are moments in a courtroom where everything just stops. Not because someone yells. Not because of an objection. Not because some evidence hits the screen. But because someone stands up. That no one thought would. And that's exactly what happened here. The courtroom door opened quietly. No drama, no fanfare, and Shyella's mother walked in. She had flown in from Peru. Hours, borders, time zones away. Just to be in that room. Her presence alone shifted the air. The jury wasn't watching the lawyers anymore. They weren't watching the screens. They were watching her. A mother. A woman who had lost a daughter. A woman whose life was now split before and after. But the prosecution stayed careful, legally safe. She did not testify about that night. She did not describe the footage. She did not speak on guilt. She spoke about history, as she remembered it. And every sentence was framed, according to her perspective, as she claims, in her experience. 'Cause in cases like this words matter. She told the court Syella had called her late at night. Not to report a crime. Not to accuse anyone. But because she was scared. According to her. I'm trying, but it's getting harder. He gets angry fast. I don't know what to do anymore. No accusations. No claims about what did or didn't happen. Just a mother, remembering her daughter's voice. The courtroom didn't move. Not a cough. Not a breath. Not a shuffle. 'Cause when grief speaks softly, people listen. The defense did what they were supposed to. We do not know the tone of those calls. We cannot confirm the context. Relationships are complex. And the judge reminded the jury. You must consider only what is supported by evidence. Everyone stayed within the lines. No theatrical shouting. No emotional collapse. No swelling dramatic music. Just real people. Trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. But what truly hit the courtroom wasn't her words. It was the photos she carried. Smiling family pictures. Birthday candles. Tiny hands holding bigger ones. Summer afternoons. When nobody knew what the future held. Not evidence of guilt. But evidence of a life that once was. A reminder that before this became a case, it was a family. But then, the trial took one final turn. Something entered the courtroom that didn't come from witnesses, or lawyers, or family. Came from a digital trail. Something hidden. Something retrieved. Something that would change how the jury saw the timeline. Forever. Sometimes the most powerful evidence in a courtroom isn't a witness, isn't a video, isn't even a confession. Sometimes it's the digital trail we don't even realize we're leaving behind. According to prosecutors, that's exactly what happened here. They introduced something the jury hadn't seen yet. Search history. Not some dramatic reveal. Not a smoking gun. Just another piece of the timeline. Prosecutors explained. Digital data doesn't show emotion. It doesn't lie. It doesn't forget. Just is. They stated that during the period leading up to that night, Google account data, tied to a device associated with Josimar, included searches about custody laws, international travel with minors, how to relocate children without the other parent. The defense immediately pushed back. Searches don't prove intent. Marriages under stress. People Google stuff late at night. Context matters. The judge instructed. These search records are to be viewed as one part of the broader timeline. Not proof of guilt by themselves. Everything stayed within the legal lines. Then came the second digital piece. Location data. Prosecutors mapped pings, showing the car's route that night, using cell tower and device tracking. No dramatic music. No shouting. Just timestamps, coordinates, movements. The defense acknowledged the route. That part wasn't contested. But they emphasized. Movement does not reveal motive. And suddenly, the courtroom understood something critical. This case was never about a single piece of evidence. Not the footage. Not statements. Not history. Not the searches. Not the digital trail. It was about how all the pieces fit together, and whether the jury saw the picture as convincing. The prosecutor closed the evidence phase with one calm sentence. Every timeline tells a story. The defense countered. Only if you choose to see one. 2 perspectives. 2 interpretations. 1 jury. No eruptions. No gasp. No dramatic movie moment. Just quiet understanding. Because now, everyone in that room knew. It was out of their hands. This case. Every hour of testimony, every exhibit, every piece of surveillance, every translated call, every timeline, every argument, was going to be decided by 12 strangers, sitting only a few feet away. 12 people who had watched, listened, taken notes, and stayed silent. And now, their silence mattered more than anything. But here's the thing. Even when a verdict drops, a story like this doesn't just end. Families live with the aftermath. Communities still ask questions. People still try to make sense of how this even happened. Because the end of a trial is rarely the end of a story.